So we're here at the Radha Damodar temple. As I mentioned, this was a central meeting point for these 6 Goswamis, these same scholars of Vrindavan, the time of Mahaprabhu, the generation or two after Mahaprabhu also. And so this temple was particularly the place of Jiva Goswami. Of these 6 Goswamis, Jiva Goswami was like the junior one. And as I mentioned, he cared for Rupa Goswami here in his last days. And Jiva Goswami, he's been placed here. His divine form is here in this samadhi meditation. And here is also Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, who's the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Srila Sridhar Maharaj described Chaitanya Charitamrita as the greatest theological literature that has ever seen the light of day. It's the most extraordinary text. As I mentioned earlier, in terms of philosophy, ontology, science, it is extraordinary. But also the poetry and the sweetness is also extraordinary, very profound. It is the favorite scripture of the followers of Mahaprabhu. So he's placed here, and his personal deities are still being worshipped on the altar there where we just were. Jiva Goswami's deities are also there. Who is Jiva Goswami? For those who don't know, Jiva Goswami, he has this special role. He's known as the protector of our lineage. Every Vaishnava, every saint has a different type of guru. Any real Vaishnava is extremely humble, but they may show their humility in different ways, right? And so Jiva Goswami was a little different in that regard. He would show his humility in the mood of a protector. Jiva Goswami was someone who was ready to fight, for the protection of his gurus and for the lineage. And as an example of Jiva Goswami's nature, we hear there's one story where, in India there's a long history of like this culture of discussion, like honorable discussion, honorable debate. And there's a culture of scholars, there's also sometimes some arrogance involved. Sometimes these scholars, they'll travel around the whole country to meet other scholars and kind of have debates and prove their superiority, right? And if someone manages to win enough debates throughout the country, they earn this title known as Digvijay Pandit. Means conquering scholar who conquers in all directions. And at one time, there was one of these scholars who came, he was traveling from India, he came to visit Vrindavan, and he'd heard about Rupa and Sanatan Goswamis. They were these brilliant scholars, they composed some great literatures, and so he thought, if I can defeat them in some debate, then I'll be able to prove myself, right, as this great Pandit. And so he came and he met with Sanatan Goswami, who was the senior amongst these 6. And he asked Sanatan, will you have some discussion with me? And Sanatan Goswami, he just didn't want to waste his time, So Sanatan just said, thank you so much, but I'm a little busy right now. I don't have so much time to engage in this with you. And so then the scholar said, then will you say that you've been defeated by me? Will you sign this paper? And Sanatan, he just didn't care about this whole ego game. So he just said, yeah, sure, no problem. And so Sanatan, he signed this paper saying that he'd been defeated by this Pandit. And then the Pandit went to his younger brother, Rupa Goswami, saying, your guru, he just admitted defeat, to me. What about you? Will you debate with me? And Rupa Goswami just told him the same thing, I'm a little busy, I'll just sign your paper, And it's a very beautiful example, right? So many times we experience in life, somebody wants to have some type of ego battle. This is the advice of Mahaprabhu. Someone wants honor, just give them honor. No problem, and then you can conserve your energy for something meaningful. So then this Pandit, then he was like about to go on his way. Then he heard that they had a nephew who was even more brilliant. This is Jiva Goswami. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one of our modern gurus, described Jiva Goswami as the greatest philosopher ever known to mankind. He wrote something like 40,000 Sanskrit verses. 40,000. That's not a small amount. Explaining the teachings in a very systematic, scientific way. This is Jiva Goswami. He was the nephew of Rupa and Sanatana. So then that Pandit, he heard about Jiva Goswami, that, I have to go and debate with him. So he went to see Jiva Goswami. And he said, I just defeated your two gurus in discussions. So what about you? Will you debate with me? And Jiva Goswami said, oh, really? Did you really defeat them? And that gentleman said, yes, I got their signatures to prove it. And then Jiva Goswami said, oh, really? Well, let me see that piece of paper. And so the Pandit pulled out the paper, and Jiva Goswami just took it from him and tore it to pieces. And then they had like a serious debate, and some philosophical matter. And then Jiva Goswami very easily defeated him because he was so brilliant. And he told him, you have to go and apologize to my gurus. And he also said something like, you should feel some remorse that you came, like my gurus, they're such great saints. It's like you came to an ocean of nectar and you couldn't even get one drop. Right? You're just living in your world of ego, and you couldn't get anything from such great souls. And then meanwhile, Rupa Goswami's nature was very humble. And he didn't always appreciate his nephew's, kind of like, this mood of, how can we say, what's the word? He didn't appreciate Jiva Goswami's straightforward mood, let's say, sometimes. And so Rupa Goswami heard what had happened. He chastised Jiva. And he said, you cannot, this isn't the mood. If you want to stay in Vrindavan, you have to be very humble. And so he said, you have to leave Vrindavan. Just go back home. Go back to your hometown. And Jiva Goswami is completely heartbroken. And he didn't want to go home. And he decided just to stay somewhere nearby and just fast. So he was staying on the banks of the Jamuna River fasting. And then meanwhile, Sanatan, the eldest brother, and also Jiva's uncle, he heard what had happened, and he was concerned. So he went to Rupa Goswami, and he said, oh, Rupa, what are the three main teachings of Mahaprabhu? And there's one expression that's widely known amongst Gaudiya Vaishnavas. They're said to be like Mahaprabhu's mood in a nutshell. And these 3 points are Jive Doya Name Ruchi Vaishnava Seva. The word Jiva means like living soul. So Jive Doya means to be merciful to every Jiva, to every soul. So Jive Doya, be merciful to all souls. Name Ruchi means to relish the name, to chant the name of the Lord and relish, taste the name. And then Vaishnava Seva means to serve the saints. So these are like 3 known principal teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Sanatan asked Rupa, what are the main teachings of Mahaprabhu? And Rupa responded like this, Jive Doya Name Ruchi Vaishnava Seva. So there's also some double meaning because Jiva means all souls, but Jiva was also the name of their nephew, Jiva. So Sanatan pointed out, well, you've just said to be merciful to all Jivas, but there's one Jiva nearby and he needs your mercy. So you must be merciful to him. And so that way Sanatan smoothed things over. But this was the mood of Jiva. He was like in the mood of a fighter, in service to his gurus, not through his own ego. but in service, ready to protect and stand up for things. This is Jiva Goswami's nature. And as I said, absolutely brilliant scholar. He also did something quite unique, that he, kind of like a lawyer, he went and he spent a few years studying like other conceptions that were against the Vaishnava conception. Like he spent years like studying deeply other conceptions so that he could better understand and present Vaishnava philosophy. So very, very highly learned and very, very important for our lineage. And also, now around the corner, I don't know if I'm going to go or not. I haven't decided yet, because they've done this whole construction, which is a little sad to see. But Rupa Goswami's samadhi is also around the corner. So Rupa Goswami, who we worship, we revere as the head of our modern lineage. We're known as Rupa Nugas sometimes, followers of Rupa, very beloved to Mahaprabhu. He's placed here, his divine form is in samadhi. But in the last few years, they've done this whole construction around it. They've really built it up. Before, it was like this beautiful, simple open-air courtyard, and it's very lovely. And they put these artificial trees there. So anyway, if you haven't been, it may be nice to go and give your respects there, and I'll think about it. And there are many other samadhis here of other different gurus and great souls throughout the ages. Because this is like such a central, special place, and many missions, they wanted to have their guru placed here, and so there are many here. Jai Shri Jiva Goswami, Jai Kaviraj Goswami. I did also want to mention about Kaviraj Goswami, just to give more of a feel for those who didn't know him, don't know of him, the author of this great scripture. It's very interesting because he never met Lord Chaitanya directly, but he came in connection with followers of Lord Chaitanya, and he had this special mercy to have this deep feeling and connection for Mahaprabhu, like the inner aspect of Mahaprabhu's divine pastimes in this world. And because in his scripture, he's actually revealing truths about Mahaprabhu which were unknown before. Normally, Mahaprabhu was worshipped like as an avatar Vishnu, but Kaviraj Goswami, he revealed this internal nature of Mahaprabhu as Krishna with the mood of Radha, his divine feminine potency, in the mood of a devotee, in the mood of his beloved, searching after himself. This was revealed in a very profound way by Kaviraj Goswami. And it's actually quite touching because he wrote this scripture in his very last days. He was like in his 80s. And he was losing his eyesight. His hands were affected by arthritis. And you see there were several places in the scripture where he's mentioning like this fear that he might leave his body at any moment. Or he might lose his eyesight, or might not be able to use his hands properly. And so he like to the point, like he's not writing like, oh, I know I'm a great soul and I know the Lord's blessing me and it's all going to be okay, But he's writing with this profound mood of humility. And there are even some places where he's summarizing later sections because he's like really afraid he's going to leave his body or something. So he's like summarizing later sections of the scripture in an earlier portion, like just in case he doesn't make it. So it's quite heart-wrenching, to read that. Very, very touching to read that. And he'll write sometimes like, I'm losing my sight, and my hands are weak, and and he says like I'm just like an instrument, like a veena. The Lord is playing me, and it's all coming through me. And sometimes it's quite curious because you see, he's like literally praising his own writing. And there's some places where he's saying, I worship everyone who reads this book because it's such a great book. Which may sound a little arrogant, but it's actually that he doesn't feel it's his own work. He really feels like he's just a channel and something's coming through him. And he's like, wow, like what is this? And it's really like, he's telling the pastimes, the Leela of Mahaprabhu and his associates, but every now and again he's like sharing his own story and sharing his own mood, and it's very, very touching. Kaviraj Goswami is just incredible. He's also very funny, Like there are certain portions where it's like undeniably just humor, some of his descriptions. Like there's like Chaitanya Charitamrita has like everything. It has like deep philosophy, and then there's like a few kind of like adventurous sections. There's one or two jailbreaks, as an example, and bribing the jailers to get out. All kinds of things, they go down. Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's really most joyful, extraordinary literature. We generally read every day in our temples. I'll share one verse from there. This was one of our Gurudev's absolute favorite verses. It's all in Bengali, by the way. This is one of Kaviraj Goswami's verses. Krishna lila mrita sar dar shata shata dar dashti ke vahe jaho hoite se chaitanya lila hoye saravara koye manohamsa chadaha chahate. And this verse is he's describing that the pastimes of Krishna, they can be considered to be the Amrita Sar, means like the essence of all sweetness condensed down, the creme de la creme de la creme. That's Krishna Leela. And then what is the nature of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela, his pastimes in this world? He compares Mahaprabhu's pastimes to a lake in which there are hundreds and hundreds of streams that are coming out in all directions. So he's saying like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's distributing Krishna in this very free and generous, magnanimous, loving way. This is why we put so much emphasis on Mahaprabhu, because Krishna's whole show is kind of like a closed program, like by invitation only. It's like Krishna's absorbed in his own pastimes with his associates, and that's kind of where it ends. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is in this mood, like sharing that sweetness of Krishna, distributing that sweetness. Srila Sridhar Maharaj says one expression, Krishna coming out, that is Mahaprabhu. So this is one and then in that verse also, Mano Hamsa Chadahatate, Kaviraj Goswami is inviting all the readers of this literature to swim in this lake. So Lord Chaitanya's divine pastimes, they're like this lake, wonderful lake from which so many streams are coming out, and he's inviting the readers. He compares their minds to swans, Mano Hamsa. Let your swan-like minds swim in this wonderful lake of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is Kaviraj Goswami's invitation. Jai, Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Jai, Kaviraj Goswami.